There were a lot of copies made, but they were all made by people that had... When the conquistadors came, they had relations with many of the native women, and then they had children, and those children were hired by the conquistadors to take account of their different societies, and they did write down a lot of records, but it was all from the Spanish perspective, and the natives never actually really trusted them enough to give them secrets. And with the quipus, the worst part about this, we have no idea what they mean. They're completely undeciphered. People have been trying to decipher these since the conquistadors.
That would have been the first educated society, and it was
Totally lost.
But then how do we know that
We have some records that we know they're used for counting, because there are some modern tribes that use it, and that's how they use it, so we postulate that it's the same.
I mean, I can still count them, but I can't see it in the
That's the thing, where it has to be more than just numbers because of the different colors and the different knots. We've been thinking... There's some order, but not enough, and the problem is we only have 600, so we can check them against the other 600, but if you pick 600 random books out of this library and try to understand all of their culture by those 600 books, you're out of luck. And the cool thing about the quipu is they were used for thousands of years even before the Inca. The Inca were the last civilization in Peru when the conquistadors came, and they had just continued the use of the quipu. But we have no idea what they mean. They're...
I was going to say, so if you go down there now, I bet you can buy a replica of that.
Oh, yeah.
And it's used as a...
Some people use them as necklaces for souvenirs. The modern printing press is very different from the Gutenberg printing press, and I'm going to just read you the definition that I got off of the printing press's website, because I could not... I tried. I was like, how do I rephrase this so I'm not just saying it? There's no way that I couldn't. So, today the majority of books are printed by offset lithography, in which an image of the material to be printed is photographically or digitally transferred to a flexible metal plate where it is developed to exploit the antipathy between the grease and water. When the plate is mounted on the press, water is spread over it, and the developed areas of the plate repel water, thus allowing the ink to adhere only to those parts of the plate which are able to print. The ink is then offset onto a rubbery blanket to prevent the water from soaking the paper, and then finally to the paper. It's a lot different from just clunk.
This is a Goss web press.
Yes, it is. I got it off of Goss's website.
Yeah. So what you're looking at here, if I may interrupt for just
Go
a
for
second.
it.
Okay, at one end of this, you've got, it's always in multiples of 2, but like giant toilet paper rolls of paper coming in, feeding into this thing. And it's running back and forth through here. So you've got a metal plate that's on there. You've got a source of ink and a source of water. And on the metal plate, as it comes around, the dark portions tend to attract the oily ink. The clear portions attract the water. So that's spinning around. Then there's a rubber mat in there. So when that positive comes around, it creates a negative onto the rubber mat. The paper feeds through, and the negative becomes a positive again when it comes in contact with the paper. So then that feeds on through. So depending if you've got, that's just if you're printing in black and white. If you've got color, you've got 4 units for the 4 different, you've got yellow, red, and blue, and those combine to make all the color, all the black and white. So it not only has to do the process with all the black, it has to do the same process with all the color. So if you've got 4 color printing, you've got 4 different plates that all have to be aligned perfectly. And in the modern presses, it's doing this on the run while it's moving. So then it all feeds through there, comes out at the end, they chop it off, folds it automatically, and it comes off the press. Fascinating.
Makes you wonder if the Chinese version is easier.
I strung the paper on this thing. Which is why you don't just hit the button and stop it, because it'll take you another hours.
It's an old press, wasn't it?
Yeah. And some of the presses don't ever shut down, right? Sometimes.
Our quarterly press is.
Our Coeur d'Alene press is printed that process, and they have now got a process. It used to be that you get down to about the last 2 inches of what's called a web, a roll, and there'd be that much left over. They now have a process that uses every scrap of paper on it. You can't go down to the press and buy a roll of leftover paper because they're losing too much money on that. And really big places, they're running editions all day. So the rolls feed paper in automatically. So when one roll empties, the other one drops into place, it feeds in automatically and goes through this process.
Amazing.
So sometimes you can actually get a paper that has, it was fed in a new roll, and it was kind of, I've seen it like
Yeah.
fed in like this, and you think, wow, what happened to my paper? It's all weird. But that must be where it was
And
reconnected.
sometimes on the color pages, you'll notice somewhere where it's a little bit out of.
Yeah.
That's because that's, you know,
A new roll.
you get to the point, well, no, it's, when they're just starting up, they haven't synchronized all the colors. And you get to the point where it's good enough, and when they go, and then they adjust that a little bit on the fly. It's scary, and if you fall into one of these things, it breaks you every half a minute. Until it gets to a wide enough place that it stops or pulls your arm off. It used to be very dangerous.
And you
Sorry.
gotta, no. And you gotta think that that was the first part of this. That's how all this started. Just little pokes. So we have all these books. What do we do with them? According to Google, 168 million books currently exist. And the earliest libraries were not for checking out books or going in and reading your favorite novel. They were archives of tax and commercial information on cuneiform tablets. One of the oldest libraries is at Nineveh, and that's from 700 BCE. They actually invented the very earliest classification system. They had 30,000 cuneiform tablets in the library of Ashurbanipal. And what's interesting about that particular library is that's where we get the Epic of Gilgamesh. There were many of our most important documents have come out of that particular library because it was so well organized and well funded. It also houses a lot of our early creation stories. However, the most important ancient library, without a doubt, was the library at Alexandria in Egypt. It was made in 300 BCE, and it's the largest and most significant library of the ancient world, bar none. It had a walkway, it had gardens, it had a dining room, meeting rooms, lecture halls, reading rooms, an acquisition department. It was enormous and so well funded by the pharaoh. When he made it, his goal was, yeah, I think we'll get 500,000 scrolls for this, the best of times. And by the time that it was destroyed, it had over 1 million scrolls.
How was it destroyed?
I'm gonna get to that in a little bit. When you go in, when they went into there, above all of the different places where the scrolls were held, there was this inscription where it said, "The place of the cure of the soul," which became the motto of a lot of modern libraries. Now, Egypt wasn't the nicest in terms of its acquisition department. It had several laws where if you were an international ship, all of your books were seized. As soon as you got there, every single scroll, every single piece of paper they took. And they gave it back to you, but they gave you copies, and they kept all of the originals. There's a very, very famous story where Ptolemy, one of the pharaohs of Egypt, decided, you know what, I want to get some of those Greek things because those are pretty awesome. So he took some of the most important Greek works, and he was like, I'll give you 15 of my unit of money, which at the time was a sum only gods would touch. And the Greeks were like, okay, well, he'd never sacrifice that, so we'll loan them to him. He kept them. And as I said, the library at Alexandria was destroyed. And there are 4 possibilities for the destruction. The most popular, and what most people have heard of, is that Julius Caesar accidentally burned it down. He was setting his ships on fire so that he would not be pursued when he was leaving Alexandria, and it accidentally spread to the rest of